Dude, that was easy. We're live.
Nice.
Did you know that? We're live right now.
Fantastic. Hello,
Dude.
World Wide Web,
So
the interwebs.
I just want to tell you right now, right off the fucking bat. I'm so happy that I got you and Evan to be on this show, because in some of my darkest moments, even though we've been separated by probably thousands of miles, you and Evan and Diane too, you guys have been like the most constant people keeping me sane, if that makes sense. Like, I have local friends, but like nobody knows me like you guys know me. It's probably
that's great.
Probably because we've showered together.
Oh, well, numerous times.
Yeah.
Several umpteen occasions, right? I will say I listened to that. I was mentioning to you. I listened to that session that you had with Evan, and man, he's just like killing it, right? You know what I mean?
He
Like,
really
I'm like,
is.
dude, he's like into robotics and all this other stuff. And I was just telling you, like, I just downloaded Skype. I felt like I was accomplished today by downloading Skype, right? I was like, yes,
You made it happen.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, oh my goodness.
But like, you have done. So we talked about you in that episode, which you heard, and it was, I think for Evan, I don't know about. I mean, for Evan and I could tell, at least with him, he did say like it was incredible. Like, you were the first one of our kind of group, right? Because we all showed up there at the same time at UNC. And so we had this, like, I don't know, we had like a freshman group of, it was like you and me and Matt and Ben. Like, we all just showed up, and of all of us, you were the first one to kind of pull out and be like, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
You know, I think you guys glazed it over it when y'all talked.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite, I do remember the time you mentioned where we forgot all of the beats, and yes, it was proud to be an American.
Oh,
and
yes.
Evan hit the nail on the head and said we just paid a bunch of buzz rolls, and
That's what he told us to do.
Bobby was so mad.
Bobby was fucking
pissed.
I've never seen.
I really
Bob
felt bad
pissed.
after that too, because he was great. What a great guy.
Yeah.
But I will say, I don't know if you guys remember, and like you, kind of feeding off of what you just said, we were all freshmen at North Texas, but I think Evan's like a handful of years older than us.
Yeah. He was like a sophomore, I think.
Yeah, and so like he came in at the same time we did, but it was like automatically like Evan had it a little bit more figured out. Like, he seemed a little bit more like chill than everybody else. Everybody else was just freaking out because we just moved out of our parents' houses, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember that that Green Brigade line. I don't know if you guys remember, but I was the first one that they had tapping it. And after like 2 games, they were like, yo, Rich, we're going to have Evan tap, because then I was like, cool, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
I do
Hand it off.
Yeah.
Like, humbling experience, but I think it was probably one of the easiest handovers I ever had. I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
That's fine. Yeah, Evan's more responsible. Dude, I remember sitting in, what was the name of that building? Was it did we call it the Annex?
There was the Annex, and then there was like the practice building. There's a bunch of buildings.
Right, it was like a hallway, and like Shatroma taught his lessons out of there, and then our little drumline room was attached to that room. It was attached,
that was the
and
Annex,
then like you went under the thing, and then the steel band room was over there. I remember sitting in that hallway, like, pretty early, and like it must have been August. And I remember you sitting there. You were sitting there with no, it was Evan that had the Zymox pad, the sweet Zymox pad, right? What the fuck pad did you have? You know, remember
I don't know.
Evans?
I had an
Evan had the one
old
with the
beat up
blue
one.
dot, the Zymox pad with the blue dot.
Oh, no, I had that one. That's
That was
actually
you,
what the computer is sitting on right now.
dude. And then you had the one with the snare sounds in it with the beads. Was that the same pad?
Oh yeah. No, it was a different pad. I'm kind of a pad geek.
You are. But I remember you sitting there. I remember you sitting there. You might have been wearing a Madison Scout shirt, and I was like, "This motherfucker has chops." Like, I was terrified of you.
You know, so that's the gig, right? It feels like obviously, it didn't just feel like, it was an actuality that everybody at North Texas was a big fish in whatever little pond they came
Yeah.
from. But then when you show up at North Texas, you're a big fish amongst a whole bunch of other big fish in the ocean. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, because everybody had their thing, right? And the funny thing is, just to kind of glaze over it, right? Walking toward back to what you started talking about a second ago, uh, that first year wasn't an A-line year. So I know you and Evan talked
Yep.
about,
It's
it was
perfect.
great getting to kind of build
Perfect.
on that. It was great.
Yep.
But I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but I genuinely remember that year because I mean, not to be cocky, but I was like the best guy at my high school when I left high
Yeah.
school,
Me
obviously.
too.
You know what I mean?
100%. I was the best guy at my high school. Yep.
And then you're standing in front of Paul Rennick. Paul, great guy. I love him.
He just had his
And it's one of
anniversary.
those, oh, really?
Yeah. I saw it on Facebook.
That's that. I feel like it's been so long since I've seen Paul, but I mean, that's one of those things you never get rid of that love.
Yeah.
But he's standing in front of me, or in front of all of us that first year, drumming under that tree right there where you're talking about, right by the
Yep.
annex, and okay, yeah, you're ticking eights.
Yeah, you
Grab a
are.
pad. Where's your pad? Pad it up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And there's only so many days of that you can take as like an 18-year-old kid before, like, I remember there being days where it was like, oh, it's time to go to drumline. I don't know. Maybe I'm sick.
Really?
Maybe, maybe I just genuinely, like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, because as soon as, like, okay, if you're ticking it off the right and then you like work to get it filled in off the right, like, oh my goodness, this and that, this and that. As soon as you get it that far and you're like, yeah,
Feel
and you
good.
got that grin on your face, and he goes backwards,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
your
you're like,
jaw hits the ground. And then when you get it backwards, he goes off the left,
fuck.
and you're like, what? You know what I mean? Just things like that. Okay, flam it,
Yeah.
flam the downbeats, not the accent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just so many permutations, and like your brain just kind of grows. Like it couldn't. All of that knowledge can't fit into what little bit of
No. You
brain
can't
you had
memorize
going
it.
to college. Right? It's just, you got to figure it out. You got
Yeah.
to be able to do it. So when people talk about, even that year, it's like, okay, yeah, okay, well, you guys drummed together for a year. It's like, yeah, but it was like, I think you have to have been there to understand
Yeah.
what level of detail we drummed together
Yeah.
for a year.
Well,
And the guys,
I was just gonna say, the guys, it's funny. Like, I teach private lessons now for my local Parks and Rec, and I tell my students all the time, I'm like, I'm not a drum teacher. I'm a brain teacher. I'm gonna teach you how to think, and that's exactly what Paul was doing, and that's exactly why I felt that first year was gold for us, because it was an
oh,
off year. We had a whole year to train our brains how to think, and so by the time you and I went to Crown, we were pretty solid. Like, you kind of learned, like, okay, what's Paul going to do next, and how am I going to think about this so I can play it off the left on the
yeah.
fly with my feet fucking moving.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head, right? To say that again, but it's one of those, like, the thinking about it systematically.
Yep.
So much so to where now, if I actually hear somebody say something that I haven't thought about, I almost immediately applaud that person. Like, it's one of those, like, oh, dude, I've never even thought of that. Like,
Yeah.
wow, you must be a genius. I mean, that's not to say anything like, oh, well, if you've thought of it and I haven't, and I'm great. It's not even a thought like that. It's just genuinely that we were taught to think of every different variation.
Yep.
So when somebody brings up something that I've never thought of, I'm like, oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, most recently, and not to geek out on this, we won't even go down this path, but most recently, using the Met not on the downbeat.
Ooh.
So
I've heard of that idea before.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I had never heard of that, and I definitely hadn't done that. And most recently, that's what I've kind of been playing with. And it's one of those things that's like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are 13-year-old kids out there that are like,
oh, dude,
what a loser. I do that all the
kids
time.
Are
you know
so
what I mean?
Good
like,
now. It's
yeah,
insane.
Yeah. And that's great. Kudos to them. But that's fantastic. I'm just saying. So here's where we're gonna close the circle, right? You were mentioning being the first one to change my major.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of how it popped up in that episode with Evan. And I think that it may have come across like, oh, Richard knows what he's doing. Like he's on the move.
Not at the time.
And I really think
no, not at the time. I was fucking legit shocked. I was like, what the fuck is he doing? What is wrong with this man? Like we were all like it was like 3 years down the road, wasn't it? Like we had already.
Oh no, it was a year and a half in.
It was a year and a half in?
Yeah. So it was the second semester of my sophomore year. I changed majors.
That was right before we marched regiment.
Yes? Question mark. I don't know. I'm horrible with dates.
I feel like it was after we got off of this tour with regiment in 2003. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I just remember being like, oh my God.
Well, that's the crazy thing, right?
So after a year and a half. All the time. Like you were in practice north or south or whatever the fuck building it was. You were shedding on that marimba. You were kicking ass. And I was so genuinely shocked.
But I think that
it was weird.
But I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like Pat, and any of your listeners, any old NT cats will understand this, right?
Of course they will.
North Texas is a grinder, right? I mean, there's a method to the madness. They're putting out great product, you know what I mean? And the hard thing about it is, I'll consider myself like the mediocre, right? For the mediocre musician, it's like, it's all hanging by a thread. It's like practicing until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, going to sleep, feeling guilty that you still don't know that part that you just practiced for 2 hours or something like that. Like, I mean, just genuinely, I think here on that call here recently, me and for the O2 Crown call, I brought up the fact that it's like that year I won Most Improved. And that genuinely was you and Noise showing me like, hey, the second partial of your diddles this week. We're going to work on that.
Yeah.
And that was like nights and weekends working on diddles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I totally forgot about that.
Oh man. I mean, but that's what I'm saying is, so put yourself in that mindset, and even being the snare drummer that I was a year and a half into North Texas, I had still not passed off any of my snare drum books.
No, because we all took it for granted.
Like I genuinely, I even took lessons that second year with Paul.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And still it was fantastic. I love taking lessons. Like private lessons from Paul for concert snare was great.
I bet it was amazing.
And literally, when I went up in front of for juries that semester, I passed one of my books. It was the marching percussion book. It was
it was the Pratt.
Yeah, chup, chup, you know what I mean? Like
chup, rigging it up.
Yeah. And so it was literally like, oh, you're the snare drummer that can't really even pass off your snare drum books, much less any of the other stuff.
To be fair, though, what we were doing with Paul in the drumline world was pretty different than the Pratt stuff. Like to get the right sound and the right feel and the right dynamics out of the Pratt stuff, like was very,
Oh,
very different.
yeah, but I think as a 19-year-old kid, all of that weighed on me in a way that when I changed majors, it wasn't a decision that was made out of maturity. It was almost like a decision like I have to run somewhere.
Wow.
And the hard thing about it was like, uh, the old joke about drummers is we can count to four over and over again.
Right.
And I'm pretty good at math. And so it was literally like there was a day, it was like a random Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and I walked from school to school on the university campus to see like what majors do you offer? I have to change majors.
Did you do that?
I literally did
I
that.
never heard this actual story. I just remember being shocked one day when I found out you were no longer a music major. I was like, what the fuck?
It was genuinely like me staying up late at night practicing.
I remember you played. Didn't you play a Keiko Abe solo at departmental? You played like.
Why are you gonna bring that up?
Like Michi,
So,
and you fucking
I
nailed
did.
that. You were like, it was awesome.
Mark Ford's marimba remembers that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Ford. I'm sorry, Mr. Ford. He gave me the staunchiest look he had ever looked at me after I played it, because I just like had my way with his marimba. You know what I mean? Like it was it was not. I thought it sounded good, but it was kind of like the equivalent of like the tubas in a dance band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just wah. You know what I mean? Like it was.
Dude, it was impressive.
It was fun.
I remember
it was
like
great.
gritting my teeth for that marimba and sitting in the audience going, "Oh my god, is he playing with xylophone mallets? Are those acrylic? What the fuck is he doing?
Is he playing with Delusions?
Yeah,
What's going on?
Playing with Delusions." For those of you kids following along, if you're super young, Deluches no longer exist. They are, I believe, now called Magnums.
Really?
Yeah.
I was going to say something about that, but I guess I'll bite my tongue. Say
whatever you want.
So, the year that I went and played a solo at PASIC, just because Deluches were the heaviest stick, I wanted to play with Deluches.
You played that solo with Deluches?
I wrote that solo with Deluches, and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, and then we went to play it for Paul. Before we went to PASIC, Paul asked us all to play, like, hey, I want you to come play your solos for me.
Yeah.
And mind you, once again, mediocre musician, right? There were 12 snare drum solos that year, and I got 6th place. Like I'm always like right at 50%, right? It's like right there. Like I'm pretty good, not great.
Wait, who won that
not
year?
Not bad. I think it was
was it Mickey?
Jimmy. Yeah, it was Mickey.
Mickey won that year?
No, it was Jimmy. No, Jimmy won that year because he did that cool like rim thing where it looked like he was eating. It was crazy.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, yeah, Jimmy's a beast,
Jimmy
right? I mean, so it's one of those like, and then of course Nick won quads that year. I mean, it was a cool year.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I was playing with Deluches, and I played that solo with Deluches in front of Paul.
You played at a mile or head, didn't you?
And then afterward, Paul goes, "How about it? Like, what's going on here, right? Like, why are you playing with Deluches?" And I was like, "Well, Paul, obviously, I love your stick. We play with your stick, but I just want a heavier stick."
Yeah.
And he literally had Innovative make a heavier version of his stick so that I played with Paul Renix that year.
Are you shitting me right now?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure that's what they're playing with now, is an FSPR2 or some shit.
Yeah, it was the heavier version. He was like, "No, we need heavier versions." So he had them like mock up. Like I got like one of the first pair of like, okay, just make them super heavy because this kid won't play. Like he wants a heavier.
Yeah,
shit.
You can't have a kid from North Texas playing with Vic Firth. Even though we did it in 2003. Right after that, we went to Regiment and we had to play with Vic Firth.
Oh yeah, and we got a whole bunch of Firth pictures and stuff. Yeah, you're making me digress all over the place.
Sorry.
It's your fault.
I'm good at this. Side note, after finals in 2003, I actually sat with Vic Firth himself in the airport and we just shat the shit. I was asking him, I was like, "Why the fuck are you painting your sticks, man? Like, this is weird." And he was like, "Oh, well, Hardiman and Scott Johnson, they just wanted it that way." And I was like, "Oh, well, I guess that."
So that stood out against the uniforms. That's brilliant. Actually, that's pretty smart, right?
Yeah.
I mean, uh, the whole thing behind that, like, think of all the cool people we got to meet
know.
during, and I'm saying even like the cool people that we got to meet were our age or just a little older, but then even like legends, right? I mean, you mentioned Pratt earlier. When we did that Heritage Festival in '02, I mean, like, I sat there and I had a conversation with John Pratt and got his email address. And he's like, yeah, just shoot me. If you have any questions or if you ever want me to listen to you play anything, just shoot me something.
Dude, I have my
It's
book,
like,
my Pratt book. I don't remember. Were you with me? Was it me and you? Me and Evan?
did you get it signed?
I did. We went and
Yeah,
we saw him.
I
We
remember
saw him
that.
at the booth. It was like an Alfred booth or whatever his publisher is. And we went and I bought one of his newer books at the time. And he fucking signed the shit. I've got it right over there.
Yeah.
What a great guy.
Yeah. But I mean, think about, okay, so those are like, it's like, that's like legendary, right? But then you start looking at the other people that, I mean, like, every once in a while, I'll have a random thought and I'll be like, whoa, I haven't thought of that guy in a long time. Like Tex. Remember Tex?
Yeah. Tex Bosley.
You know what I mean? Like, what a fantastic guy.
Yeah. An amazing
You know
guy.
what I mean? Just like, I guess I'm at a good point where I can think back and think like, man, I'm very blessed to even have gotten to really like hang out.
So that's kind of what Evan said, in his episode, was just like, he wouldn't take it back. Like the way we went through and the ensembles we played in and the people we got to meet and the people, it's weird. Like you don't ever think of it like I got to meet this person when you know the person, right? Like fucking Nate Worth.
Oh,
dude, I know Nate. Like he's a friend, and so when his band came through, he came through Connecticut with Ghost Note. And they were posting it on social media, and I was like, fuck, I'm going to go to this show. So I drove like 20 minutes down to this brewery that he was playing at with Ghost Note. And I was standing there in the audience, and he just happened to look over, and he was like, oh my God. He's like playing along. And he looks at me, he's like, holy shit. And so after his set was over, he came down and gave me a big sweaty hug. And I was like, man, but like, you don't think about it. I don't see him that way. Like, he's not somebody that I got to
celebrity.
meet. Yeah, he's not somebody
He's not celebrity.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah. But he's got like 3 or 4 Grammys now. Like, what the fuck?
Oh well, I mean, like, and then
I've had and Nick, even Doug,
yeah.
like Doug Bush and Patricia, like they're fucking rock stars, man.
Dude, Doug and Patricia are putting out some of the coolest stuff.
They really are.
Around, not much. I mean, like, obviously in North Texas, they're putting out the coolest stuff, but they're putting out some of the coolest stuff around, right? Yeah. I mean, you watch Doug play snare, and his hands look good.
Super hands.
Like, you literally, and I have a copy of Super Hands around here somewhere, but it's literally like you watch him play. And all that inverted stuff, it looks so natural in his hands. Yep. And to think that like high school kids are getting to learn that, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my goodness.
Speaking of which,
that's crazy.
The other day, it must have been, it was like a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. He posted the audition music. I think it was for
Capel or something, right?
That shit was baked.
Oh yeah,
baked. I was like, oh my God, like that is. You're wanting high school kids to play that shit? It's baked.
And they're doing it, right? I mean, you got to think that's like I can only assume, right? This is all stipulation, but I can only assume that like if your kid's like a snare drummer somewhere up there, and you want them to be part of that, you're like renting an apartment in that school district just to be able for them to be able to go to that school. I don't know. I would assume, right? Like, okay, Mom, Dad, can we live in this hole in the wall for a year so I can go win a state championship?
Then again, though, you got North Texas guys all over that area, so it's like.
Oh yeah, well, and the funny thing is, and
like you got Chad. Chad's out there still.
Chugga?
Yeah, Chickadee Chad. Shouts out. I don't know if he listens. Chad, you got Chad. You got fucking Noyes. I don't know. Did he say he was still at Allen? I don't remember where he said he was at. But you got Chad, you got Noyes, you got Jimmy floating around somewhere. You got Uh, you got Doug and Patricia. You got
Mickey was up there at
Mickey.
Farmers Branch, but he went somewhere, didn't
I think he's.
he? He was at Farmers Branch, but he left.
I think he's still in Texas. I think he's still in North Texas somewhere. But yeah, Mickey's out there.
Oh, okay.
Like fucking everybody's out there, and they're
Oh,
they're
yeah.
they're preaching the word, as it were.
Well, the funny thing about it is it's starting to bleed further south. I remember coming back to Houston after having been at North Texas for a year or whatever. And I mean, you could kind of pick whatever, like whatever summer camps, whatever you wanted to do. Like you just called up that band director, gave him a rundown of what you were into, and he was like, "Yep, come on, we'll pay you. Come on," you know what I
Yep.
mean? And so now, I'm in the Woodlands, just north of Houston, and some of these drum lines have, if they're not North Texas guys, they're SCV guys, or they're, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, it's the word is getting out, right? And I know a lot of people think like, oh, well, for good reason, they think, well, the guys that are kind of the kids that played under Rennick think Rennick is like, holier than thou, but it's one of those, like, it's not that so much.
No.
It's just the fact that he knows what he's doing, right?
Yeah. Well,
He's found the formula.
he used to always tell us that smarter drummers will win. And
Well, and the hard thing about it is, it's one of those, like, I don't know if you've seen this show. It's on Apple TV. I don't know. We're not endorsing a show at all, are we? It's a Ted Lasso. Have you seen that?
no, but I know the name.
Super cool. Like, it's a show, and it's a made up show. It's supposed to be kind of, I guess it's a comedy. I don't know. I laugh at weird things, and I don't laugh at things that are supposed to be funny. So who knows? I think it's supposed to be a comedy. But it's about a coach, and basically he has an odd way and an odd approach to coaching, but it's very family oriented,
Yeah.
right? It's very forgiving, and even though, like we were talking earlier, even though Paul was very pushing on us, I'll never forget. There were so many times in the middle of like rehearsal, he'd be like, "Life lesson, guys."
Yep.
You know what I mean? And he would just throw something out, and he'd be like, as a 19 or an 18-year-old kid, it's like, "Oh, never thought of that." Like, one of the main ones I remember him telling
Ooh,
us.
I can't wait. I
One
wonder if
time,
it's the same one.
he was talking about spending money on going to see live music.
100%. I remember this. We were under the tree
He's-
over by the volleyball. Yeah,
Mhm.
I remember the tree. Yep.
Yeah. And he said, he's like, you'll never regret it.
Nope.
You can go without a meal. You'll always remember that live concert you went to. You won't remember that meal that you missed. It'll be fine.
Yep.
And it genuinely, like,
Changed my life.
I remember him saying that, and every once in a while that would come into the back of my head, and I'd be like, that's right, because we saw some really cool concerts while we were in our youth.
Yeah.
I've sat from me to 2 rows in, or like so close to BB King that I don't want to talk or look around because I think he'll mess up his show.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and the only reason I ever spent the money on those types of things is because of a genuine, hey,
That conversation.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember what else I would have done with that money. But all that to say, his way, his approach of bringing us in and bringing us together was making us understand, like, look, you're not just here to learn how to, a rebound and your fulcrum and whatever. We can talk technique all day long, but I'm trying to get you guys in the right mindset.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's a big thing. And so it's funny because you can run into kids now, right?
Yeah.
Kids that march SCV, and you kind of click, even though you didn't march to the same place, but you were taught in the same format.
Yep.
And it's like, oh yeah, you get it. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you hear that whistle and you immediately stop what you're doing and look around.
Oh yeah. Nightmares of the whistle, right?
Nightmares of the whistle. I watch videos all the time. My YouTube feed, when I pull up the YouTube app, is like full of fucking drum corps videos. So I'm always watching like Vanguard. I'm looking and I'm ticking them, because that's what I do. Because they're all playing on Black Max for some stupid reason.
but they're all dancing and stuff now
Yeah,
too.
they're
You can't
dancing.
fault them. They tick every once in a while because they're dancing, doing a handstand. They're splitting stuff while one of them's standing on the other drum. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
But you know what though? I will say this: you can always tell. You can always tell that Paul. I could close my eyes. You could play me anything, and I will know that Paul wrote it.
Oh yeah.
It could be the most baked shit ever. I can still recognize. I can pick out his stuff any day.
The you know, with that being said, love Paul, but I will say that genuinely, I mean, as a drummer, if you have percussionists that watch this or listen to this show, you won't go wrong going with anybody, right? Like just trying to put your head down and learning.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that. If it hurts, don't do it, right? I know a lot of people that were being taught to do buzz eights because it was the cool thing in 2000 or something.
I don't know, man.
But
Syncadix trying to mark time to Syncadix. That hurt. That was painful.
but you know,
Or doing the swing pattern along with Shups.
Oh, right. But that's what I'm saying. It's one of those like I'm saying not if it hurts your brain, cool. If it hurts and you're gonna have tendinitis for the rest of your life, don't do that.
Don't do that.
You know, I'll never forget. And you want to talk one of the first things that Paul got onto me that we ever kind of disagreed about. Like, I don't think we ever really disagreed. There were a couple of things where I felt like I disappointed him, but that was just because whatever. But
it's like your parent, right? Like you don't want to disappoint Paul. Like you just
disappoint you.
No,
it happens. The in 03, we made it like I'd say 80% of the season at Regiment. And there's even Vic Firth ads with our the picture of us as a snare line.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see I have earplugs in. And they're not like flesh toned earplugs. They're the orange. I bought them at Walmart every time we stopped off somewhere to do laundry so that I could just like get the foam earplugs for 99 cents. Yeah. And I wore them all that summer.
Did you really?
And yeah.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Rich was on the other side of the line. You were like 6 dudes away from me.
Yeah, it was a big line. It was big. But it genuinely was.
Were you the only guy wearing earplugs?
Yes.
What the fuck?
And like, I don't think that I ever told anybody. It was just genuinely like, dude, I had Joe House on the outside of me, and Joe was a loud player,
right?
Which is great because if it's clean, it's clean, right? It kind of quiets down once it all lines up.
Yeah, he could play through the head like a motherfucker.
But it's one of those. It's genuinely like I started wearing headphones or earplugs, and like I said, about 80% into the season. This is before any. It's kind of like we can say it was a different time, right? It was like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know. But you know they're redoing that show, right?
Are they?
They're doing it this year. Nice. They're going to reboot that show.
Good. Maybe we should go. We'll go to the Denton show. I'll fly you down.
All right, I'm game. I was like, I don't know if they're coming to Connecticut. I'll see them at the Bristol parade because Bristol, Rhode Island's just up the road.
Dude, that's my favorite.
Fuck that parade.
That was my favorite.
That was a beautiful parade, but fuck that parade.
That parade taught me that people in New England were similar. I'll say similar enough to people in Texas. Like they were barbecuing in the front yard. They were offering us beer at, I was like, oh, you guys party like we party. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like,
and they had the accent.
Yeah. Where I think as growing up in Texas, you were always told like, oh, that's like a different world, right? It's like, oh, no, it's not.
It kind of is.
It kind of is. Yeah. But it is, but it isn't, right? I think that's probably a whole nother conversation, but it's one of those, I don't even remember what we were talking about before you said that.
I know. I'm good at derailing shit. Really good at derailing shit.
Well, but so Paul finds out 80% of the way into 2003.
It's like San Antonio show, and you're like popping in earplugs.
I think it was even later than that. Jesus. I mean, like literally, it was like Paul was like, he goes, "Are you wearing earplugs?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, Since when?
Yeah, that's the
It's
question.
like, I was like, since every days. You know
Oh,
what
so
I
you were
mean?
wearing them all
And
summer.
I was wearing them all
Okay.
summer. That's what I'm saying. I literally have. There are Vic Firth ads where like you can see down the line, and here I am, like clean shaven, no hair, with orange earplugs in my ears. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like now, out of outfit, right, or whatever, is probably was against regulation or whatever. You know,
I don't fucking know. We broke
but
that
it
regulation
just
all the time.
oh yeah, it wasn't good. But I mean, it's one of those
I
like
never once
it
cut one of my
genuinely
t-shirts,
like.
by the way. Not once.
But it's genuinely like he was like, well, take him out.
No,
I was like, well, hold on. I've been playing with him since every day. So if I take him out,
it's gonna
it's going to
change.
sound completely different.
Yep.
It's going to sound completely different. This is how I've been practicing. And so it was literally like the first time that what I thought wasn't in line, but it was almost like a kid, right? Because, and obviously we were kids, but it's one of those, in retrospect, I probably should have like told him like, hey, I want to wear these up, during everydays. And I just thought it wasn't a big deal. But I tell kids all the time now, I'm like, look, man, your hearing, you got to protect your hearing. But you knew that, like you had those cool
I
earplugs
did.
that were molded.
I did.
Like
But you know what?
you were one of the only people that I
I
knew
didn't
that had
I didn't
earplugs.
wear them in any of the drum lines because it changed the sound too much for me. Like I just couldn't. I tried them a couple times, I think, in practice or rehearsals or something, and it just didn't. I don't know. It just changed it too much. I could not hear the way I wanted to hear, even
So,
though even though they were supposed to be the kind of earplugs that don't change the sound. They did. They changed the sound too much, and I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear the way I wanted to hear it, or I needed to hear it, or
yeah.
I thought I needed to hear it. So all those years, no, I didn't wear them. I wore them when I played in bands, right? When I'm playing drum set and I'm at a show or whatever. I wore them then, but like in the drumline stuff, never once. It just changed it too much.
Yeah.
It was too different, you know.
I don't know, maybe I'm a coddler in that way, but it's literally one of those, I think in my old age, in our ripe old
Oh yeah.
age, I have started to realize like, dude, protect your
Oh no,
hearing,
100%.
protect
And
your,
and I, I thought
like,
the philosophy was I thought Paul's thing was like as long as you're doing it from day one, he didn't have a problem with it.
I think maybe it just caught him
Or
off
maybe
guard.
like if
Like I
we
said,
all
it
were
was,
doing it, right?
oh yeah, it was just one of those, like I said, I mean, there are several stories, some of which you know about, some of which you don't, or I think you probably know about all of them. But it's one of those like I think that was outside of outside of showing up late to practice the day after initiation. Like there are all those great
Yo, he had
stories
to have seen
that
that coming. He had
oh
to have
yeah he
seen
did,
that coming.
but I just ended up being the one that did it, right? And so and like it's one of those like all great points to look back at. Like just like Evan said, I don't regret anything. Like it all played out the way it was supposed to play out, right? And I think after changing my major, it really changed everything because I got to understand. My first year at North Texas, my first semester at North Texas, I took 17 hours of
Oh yeah, that's
classes,
right. I remember you were like hype. That's
and
part of the reason why I was so scared of you. I was like, man, he's a good drummer and he's hyper motivated. He's doing like 80 million hours of school right now.
well, I mean, you think 12 hours is full time. I've just taken another like two classes, but the hard thing about it is, as a music major, it was 11
Yeah, because
classes.
half your class is music theory and ear training and fucking piano and all that shit's 1 hour,
Yeah.
even though you meet three
Yeah.
times a week for an hour.
hmm
Yeah.
So literally, it was 11 classes, and one of those classes is marching band. So that's all weekends and like every afternoon or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, and you got to do that if you're a music
Right.
major. And so it was literally 11 classes, 17 hours. And so I did that for a year and a half, as a music major.
Fuck.
And then when I changed majors, and I went into the business school for accounting, the counselor said, okay, well, we really recommend all of our students to take no more than 12 hours.
It's like
So I changed my
four
major,
classes.
4 classes, 4 classes. I didn't have any classes before noon,
Oh,
and I didn't have any class on Friday,
oh.
which I didn't know was a thing either, right?
Yeah,
And
because
so
you're thinking you have oral skills, you have piano, you have theory at least, and then at 1 o'clock, what do we have on Fridays?
yeah,
You got
exactly. You're
departmental.
gonna have yeah, and so that makes it to where it's like I'll never forget that semester was the last semester in the dorms, and I was rooming with Ehlers,
Yep.
and he would get mad. He would get so mad because I would sleep in. I'd wake up. I'd go take a shower, and then I would like sit down and watch like a movie until like 11. And he would come back to the room, and he's already had like 3 or 4 classes. And he's like, "Wake up, dummy!" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Okay, so
but
you were still living in the you weren't even a dad yet. Like you hadn't even like gotten serious lockdown life. Man, that's
oh
crazy.
no, no. But it was like, I was dating at the
Right.
time, and it was one of those like I remember it taking a toll so much so like mentally, and it's not like a woe is me story, right? I think that I understand what like secret pressure is. There's probably a better like therapist word for
Right.
that or
Right.
whatnot, but it's literally like everybody saw like kind of the hangout fun loving guy, I'm around for practice, this and that, and then I would kind of go off by myself and be completely disappointed in like everything that was like occurring because it was just genuinely like I'm not succeeding. But what I thought I should see as far as advancement was not happening, and there was no one else to blame except myself. And so when
Oh,
it comes down to like, okay, well, you're getting 3 hours of sleep. You could get less than that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just like and you start beating yourself
Yeah.
up. And it was literally and I made this comment on Instagram when you posted that snippet about me changing majors when you and Evan talked about it. And I said, you know, it was literally a decision that was made based on fear. Because when I looked around and I saw everybody, you know, like everybody always, the grass is always greener on the other side. You think like, oh, nobody else is having
Right.
problems, nothing's going on, this and
Right.
that and
Right.
that.
Right.
But obviously, as an adult, you understand that that's a bunch of BS,
Mm-hmm.
right? But as a child, when you're looking around and you're like, man, like uh, everybody else is going to be rock star, and I'm going to be like, I'm gonna end up teaching PE dodgeball or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not. I mean, shout out to all the dodgeball PE teachers. I mean, it's just one of
You're
those.
gonna
Like,
be teaching the
it's a
beginner.
gig, right?
You're gonna be teaching the beginner class at Piscataway Junior High.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. But it literally turns into one of those like, man, like, what is going on here? And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to see that kind of reality early
Oh,
on.
100%.
But it's also one of those things like I think that not beating up on anybody and not speaking ill about anybody either, but I think some of the people that we know that have good gigs right now were not the greatest percussionists. They just stuck
They
it
just stuck it
out,
out. Yep.
and it's one of those like there's something to be said about perseverance as well,
Yeah.
right? Stick it out, just
Just
stay in
stay in
there
there.
because
Well, and
you have to.
some people, I mean, I know some people that made it all the way through and they're not doing what they should be doing, right? Like they're not percussion directors for some school district. Like they're not doing the path. They kind of got the degree, they made it through, they did all the lessons, they passed all the juries, and now they're doing whatever it is they're doing. Like look at Reyes.
Oh,
Reyes isn't doing that shit anymore.
oh yeah, but he's Big Bang Frank over there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
I hope he's listening.
right, right,
So
right.
wait. So you didn't go to North Texas. You went to North Texas because you had this for the same reason I did. Like you went because you wanted to be one of those top tier snare drummers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I wanted to be Mark Ford. Like literally,
You
like
wanted to be
I
Mark
think
Ford? I didn't even know who Mark
I
Ford
gen-
was until I got to North Texas.
I went to audition at North Texas and played a Mark Ford, like a Mark Ford solo Ford Mark IV.
Jesus Christ, that's bold.
Like, yeah, that's stupid is what that is. Don't do that. You
I
know what I
didn't
mean?
do
Like,
that.
play somebody else's solo.
No, I didn't do that.
It's somebody else's. But I didn't know what permutations were. So when it came to all the rolls and the permutations that he was doing in that solo, I literally would just let my hands go limp and I would roll like this, and it sounded good. And I had listened to it enough to where it sounded similar enough to when he played it. And so when I auditioned, he literally, after I was done, he goes, "Play the roll section again." And I played it. And he smiled and he came over to me and he played it the way he actually plays it. And it's all, now that we know, obviously, but it's one of those, like, it's all like 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever permutation he's throwing in there, right? And it's just because he's Mark Ford. And it was one of those, like, I was like, oh man, I didn't even know that that was a thing, right?
That's not your fault.
You know,
I mean, it was just your percussion director or whoever, you know, was teaching you.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't even have a percussion director. We had like a private lessons teacher that would come and he would teach us. But the hard thing about it is it's never the instructor's fault in my head. Like in my youth, I never blamed the instructor. It was literally like, you weren't listening to what people were telling you. You were, I mean, you're a kid.
You're a kid.
It's going. You're lucky if like 10% of it stays in your brain as it exits through the other side of your head, right? You're a kid.
So, all right. So I want to know, like, how did you reconcile this, right? Like, because you came to North Texas, you wanted to be Mark Ford, which is weird. Nobody wants to be Mark Ford. I'm pretty sure even his own kids don't want to be Mark Ford.
Hey, shout out to Miss Ford.
Shout out to Miss Ford.
But, you know,
Miss fucking Ford, how about it?
Dude, the unsung hero of that percussion.
Oh my God, she was the best. You'd roll up to the office and she was right there every time. She
held my hand through so much
stuff. Know, me too. That man, shouts out.
But you know, the funny thing is, so even before that, I had because I'm brown, and I mean, and I'm not trying to like beat that up, but it's one of those, because I'm Hispanic and I went to what they would consider like a underprivileged high school or whatnot, and I graduated high enough in the class, I was offered a full ride to UT.
Really?
So I had a full ride to UT.
To do music?
But no, it was basically to do whatever you wanted to. It was like, because you're a smart kid. And I'm not, you know, once again, like, I'm a lot dumber than I was back then. Like, people were supposed to get smarter. I think I went the other way. I don't know how that happened. Another direction of the conversation. But it's one of those, like, I had a full ride to UT, and my parents were like, well, you know, it's ultimately up to you, because it's the debt that you're going to build up or not build up, right? I mean, they were kind of, you know, upfront about it.
It makes sense.
And so I decided to not go to UT because I wanted to be a percussionist. And if you want to be a percussionist,
you don't go anywhere.
In my head, at an 18-year-old kid, I was like, then I'm going to North Texas, right?
That's right.
And so, you know, and I'm sure that there are fantastic percussionists at UT, right? You know what I mean?
I'm not so sure. I don't give a fuck. I'll talk shit.
There are one or two guys in some burnt orange hanging out with Matt McConaughey. You know what I mean?
Like Cavaliers.
Oh yeah. But I mean, and that would have been a completely different path, right? And so it ends up, I go to North Texas, then a year and a half in, change my major to accounting, and I'm sitting there. I ran from music because I didn't feel like I was going to hack it. Went into accounting. Accounting is super easy to me.
Dude, I took some accounting classes and I can't figure out the difference between a debit and a credit.
But that's the hard thing, right? It's one of those, I think we're all gifted in our own ways, right? I mean, because you're talking about stuff earlier when we were just getting on the phone, you're talking about the setup that you have there, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, right?
I got the solid state logic.
Yeah, the Salisbury State logic. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like a tasty, delicious treat, you know what I mean? But you start. Everybody has their own thing, right? And I think, don't get me wrong, you can learn how to do something, But I think that if it's genuinely easy for you, you know, like the hard thing is, are you settling? Like, are you taking the
Yeah.
easy route? There's
Yeah.
a hard route and there's the easy
Right.
route. And I can genuinely look back at it and go, well, I ran for the easy route because I was like, dude, like, I got to take a breath.
Yeah.
I got to take a breath. And there are, as odd as it sounds, I think that there are several people who would be able to relate and say, like, I'm just going to take this gig for a little bit, and then I'll get back to what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Heck
Right?
yeah.
You know
So,
what I mean?
so I had made that post. We were talking about that post, the little clip of me and Evan talking about this exact thing. And I made that post. And one of my other friends, whom Susie, I'm hoping to have on the show, um, she's hella busy, but she's awesome. I went to high school and junior high with her. Anyway, she had made a comment about, like, this is, where do you draw that? Essentially, it boils down to, where do you draw that line between, this is my passion, how far do I keep pushing this, and when do I, if ever, do I say, okay, enough's enough, I need to buckle down and get a real job and provide for myself and my family, whoever I'm taking
Yeah.
care of. And that became kind of a really interesting topic, which is kind of a big reason why I wanted to have you on, because I was like, man, Rich made this huge decision. And I actually thought that it was because you had started you were about to start your own family. Um, but I guess it's not true. I guess it was more related to the music education
It
major.
was, and I wouldn't even
Because
blame the education
to
major.
be honest, I came to the same realization like a year or two after you did. I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. This is too much. This is too much. It's ruining music for me.
Well, it's ruining that for you. But I think, once again, in hindsight, hindsight's always 2020. But I think that, if, not to sound like too much of a hippie or something like that, but it's one of those. I think that if somebody would have shown up and been like, look, uh, you can be an artist in whatever way you want to be an artist, and if you hone your skill the way you make a, if you don't buy name brand cymbals, you just get some cracked stuff and you make all your own sounds and this and that and this and that, and you make your own art, there will be people that will appreciate you honing your skills in your
Oh yeah,
art.
more so now than ever.
Yeah, everybody wants an authentic art
Yeah.
experience. And the hard thing was, I had the mentality, like, I can't be a Pat Howard. I can't be a Nate Worth. I can't be a Nick Worth. I can't. And so when you start looking around and you go, well, I can't be any of those people, and that your goal is to try to be or emulate those people, irregardless, if that's even a word, regardless of
Is that a word?
what you're trying to do, right? It's like a triple negative
Yeah.
or something.
Irregardless.
Regardless, me felt English. That's impossible. If you're trying to be somebody else in any avenue of life, you can't be that person.
No.
You can't be that
No.
person. You can only be you. And so the beauty of, and I did read that comment that you mentioned that your friend left, and I thought it was a great point, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um,
Because
but
you got to
because
have those
if
people
you
who persevere and push fucking through.
yeah,
Like, I
well, you
have a
have to have those
student,
people.
or a former student of mine, and I immediately thought of him when she made that post. So I used to teach while I was at UNT. I was teaching at a school in Fort Worth, and one of the kids, he was a quad drummer, and during marching band season, then we did an indoor show, and he ended up being the drum set guy. Um, but supremely talented, just a really, really, really talented drummer, and he was never he was never into the marimba stuff, although I forced him to do it, eat his vegetables. And we helped him, me and my friend Manny. Do you remember Manny? You remember Manny? Anyway, I had yeah, I
Perhaps.
had Manny on one of my episodes, but I marched regiment with him in '04. He's a TCU guy. Um,
Hmm.
but
I may remember.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. TCU
So
guy.
Manny and I
Yeah,
were teaching at this school, and this kid, he was really good. We helped him with his audition to get into UNT to be a music major, and he ended up moving to Austin, like dropping out of UNT after like a semester or two, or I forget how long he was there. But he got in, he got lessons with Ed Soph. Like he was on the rise. He was set to be a music major in North Texas. And he decided to switch gears and basically pushed through because he was chasing his dream. He moved to Austin, joined a couple of bands, started taking lessons from Todd Suckerman. You know who that is?
yeah.
He's the guy that plays, I think, with Journey right now.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
And now this kid, he's huge. His band's been written up in Rolling Stone. Like, but that's what we need. Like, we need people like that. But at
Oh
some
yeah.
point in your life, there becomes a moment, whether you realize it or not, where you're gonna have to make a choice. Like, am I gonna push through this and possibly suffer, or am I going to take kind of the easy road and just decide like I need something stable to provide for my own life? And when you
Well, and I think that
it's a hard decision.
what
It's a
puts it
really hard decision. I think we've all faced it.
well, what puts an exclamation point on that is what is your what is your idea of
Mm,
accomplished?
yeah.
If it's you need to have a house and a nice car and you know what I mean, like a white picket fence,
You
okay,
could do that.
then run
You could
after
do that a
that.
million different ways. But
And
I mean, as far as
yeah, you
following
can
your
do it.
dreams, I think is what Susie was getting after. Following your
Yes.
dream. I mean, if you look at it without really paying, without deep diving too much into it, you and I kind of gave up on our dreams, right? Like we went to North Texas
Yeah.
with the dreams of being music majors and coming out alive and surviving all that, right? We didn't survive. We stopped. We were like, no, I can't do this anymore. So
I mean, it's a marathon,
it
though,
really
right?
is.
It's one of those. It's like I think sometimes uh, you start to get halfway through and you realize that you don't actually want it enough. You don't want to do what it takes to get to the end of this
No,
race, or 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 maybe the finish line moves, or it's not what you expected it
right.
to be, and it, and that's fine too. But what I'm really getting at is if you are happy on the journey, if you're happy chasing that dream, then who cares if you ever end up with that house? If you, who
Right.
cares if you have a nice
Yeah.
car? Like you could be happy, in a double wide and with a
Oh
bicycle.
yeah.
I don't know, you
Yeah,
know
no,
what I
no.
mean?
No, I
But
100% get that
yeah,
because I was actually there. So when I left North Texas, I went to study audio engineering and I actually finished that school, which was dope. And then but I was working at a couple of retail places and in my spare time, I was playing in bands and I was DJing. I was broke as fuck. And I was for all intents and purposes a huge failure because I was not I was working all this I was working a lot and I was also playing music and being in the industry and all that stuff. But I was barely keeping up with my own bills, my own rent, my own utilities, myself. Like I couldn't hang on. And but when I look back on that, that's some of the best times of my
yeah,
life
because you were living,
because I was
you were
doing
living.
everything I wanted to do and nothing that I didn't want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those.
But then I woke up at some point and I was like, I can't have a child, right? In this
Yeah.
scenario. I just can't. You know? I
And the funny thing is, you could,
Oh, you
right?
could, for sure.
You
Yeah, you
could,
could.
you
Yeah.
could, and there are people that do, and and they figure it out. But that's just another one of those things where
How
it's
much
like
risk?
you
Yeah.
could, you're just not willing to do. And I'm not saying you
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I'm the same setup, right? I've said the same thing before. I'll get frustrated at work, and I'll tell my wife, I'm like, man, uh, dude, I just love to quit. And to my surprise, she's like, quit. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm like, well, no, you're supposed to like talk
No,
me
you're
off
supposed
the
to talk me.
bridge. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to
Hey,
push
wait
me
a minute.
off, right? And yeah, I said I was going to jump. Don't
Yeah.
push me, But the hard thing about it is, she has spoken that truth into me and been like, look, you think the kids care if we live in a nice house or if we have the things that we
Dude,
have?
I saw it the other
They'd be
day.
happy.
Don't even play. Your daughter learned how to drive on a Range Rover.
Oh, dude, that's a 22-year-old
Is that
truck.
the same one you had from back in the day?
Oh no. No, 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 no. I've gone through all my phases in life,
Yeah.
right? I literally, I bought this truck at the beginning of COVID, about a month into
I love how
COVID
you
and
call it a truck
quarantine and
still. That's
everything.
fucking OG right there.
Well, a month into COVID and quarantine or lockdown or whatever, I got rid of the vehicle that I had because I was making payments on it, and I was
it
like,
was the GTI, right? You had a GTI?
no. At this point, I actually had a Honda Civic.
Oh,
Literally, like
that's right. I remember you telling me about the Civic. Yeah.
yeah. So I literally had downsized to a Honda Civic because I was putting a ton of miles on my
And
commute.
you had a Jeep before.
Well, I had a Jeep before, and so I got rid of my Jeep, used that money to make a down payment on our house. You know what I mean? And so make sacrifices to do what you think you need to be doing, right? Or what you want to be doing. And when we went into quarantine, I got rid of that car because I was making payments on it, and I literally went and bought this Land Rover that's a 22-year-old Land Rover because my 15-year-old's going to need a vehicle in a year or whatever. I don't know. If she's good, maybe it'll be a year, but I don't know. Sometimes it's looking closer to like 2 years.
15.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 15 and a half. She's doing great, man. We actually just ran a marathon together in March.
I saw that.
And so just man, she's doing great, man. She's better than ever.
Dude, I remember
I mean?
standing under the tree at the annex watching some fucking group, and she had little ear foamies in as an infant, and I was like, this is how you parent.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's gotten to see some cool stuff. She's gotten to be cool places, and but I mean, it genuinely is. You start looking at it and you go, think about if you're exchanging your time for money, and you exchange less time and you make less money, but you end up with more time to spend with your kids. Your kids would probably be happier with
100%.
You know what I mean? And
that's exactly what I did.
That's a very generic statement. It's a very generic statement.
But it's true.
And I know that there's more variables that go into that, but
it's true. That's exactly what I did. I got off active duty Navy. I was making more money than I'm making now, but I was gone all the time. All the time. And the biggest reason why I got off active duty is because I was like, I'm so tired of not being able to hang out with my kids, for one, and then two, hang out with myself. I had no time. Like, it was literally, I'd come home and I would be with the family, and then I'd have to go to bed so that I could wake up at the butt crack of dawn to go to work the next day. And so I was like, you know what? I'll take a pay cut if it means that I'm going to have more time with my kids and myself.
Yeah. Well, and good for you for understanding that. And I think that's the funny thing is, I had been really looking forward or trying to find ways to work closer to home or work from home. And so whenever everything went into quarantine mode and everybody went to working from home, it was like answered prayer for me. So
too.
People are ready to go back to the office, and I'm like, I don't ever want to go back to the office. You know what I mean?
To either. I have no reason to.
My
team is more efficient. My team is more efficient working from home than we ever were working in the office.
Well, and to be honest, you're probably working. I don't know. I know me personally. I'm working more hours because I was commuting an hour away with no traffic, and so in Houston traffic after work, an hour and a half to get home. So 2.5 hours a day, 2.5 hours. And so as soon as now I'm working from home, now that company gets 2.5 extra hours basically because I'm willing to roll over out of bed, walk over to the kitchen table, sit down,
Yeah.
and start
Yeah.
working. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's and so it's fun. And then the nice thing about it is, and I probably don't use this or I probably don't utilize this enough, but it's one of those like, in what I do, if the kids want to go for ice cream for lunch, we go get lunch. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I get to hang out with my kids in the middle of the
Yeah.
day, which oh my goodness. And the hard thing about it is, and once again, a whole another conversation. How are businesses going to feel like they can put that genie back in the bottle?
Oh, I know my company is seriously thinking about it because so we have I have my work computer here at the house and it's obviously managed by the IT department from my company. And so every couple of days there'll be like a software update or whatever and they'll change the lock screen on the computers. And they'll put like a message on there like saying don't forget safety and don't forget blah blah blah, right? Right? Because I work at a shipyard. And so
Mm-hmm.
the other day they had this new screensaver up on my lock screen that says like don't forget to call this number when you get your vaccine and let us know that you got vaccinated. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Not doing that because if as soon as you know that I'm vaccinated, you're gonna try to call my ass back to work, back to the
Well,
office.
yeah.
And it
What?
makes no
And
sense for my
yeah,
company to bring the vast majority of us back to the office. God only knows how much money they're saving by having my ass right here in this chair every day.
right. How many snacks and coffee do you
Dude,
drink and eat?
snacks and coffee, and you're a fucking accountant. You know this stuff. This is overhead. It's all
Right.
overhead.
Right.
The cost of the
Two
air
pencils a
conditioning, the
month
cost of the
too.
building, the cost of the fucking everything.
Yeah.
It's got to be
Well,
cheaper.
well, yeah, it has to be cheaper. The hard thing about it is, I think that a lot of these companies had leases signed, so they still have the
Right.
space. They haven't been able to get rid of the space, and so and old habits die
Oh
slow, right?
man,
And
tell me about
so
it.
you're going to have a bunch of older people that still think that there's a lot of need to go into the office, and there's a bunch of people who, let's just face it, don't function well if they don't have a structured
Right,
environment,
right, right. I've heard a lot
you
of people
know?
that are like, I can't wait to get back to the office because I'm
Yeah.
so unproductive at home. And I'm like, well, you just don't have a very strong mind.
Well,
Like,
well,
I'm at my
and that's
desk,
the hard thing.
fucking leave me
Yeah.
alone. I'm working. Like, I got music on, I got my headphones, I got speaker, whatever. I'm working.
But it's another example of how everybody functions differently, and how do you police that, right? As an HR person, are you like, okay, you know, you can take surveys, but the upper management's going to do whatever other management wants to
Yeah.
do, right? And the hard thing about it is, like my company, they said, hey, we want you guys to be back in the office in July. And dude, like they said that, and like anxiety bubbled
Oh,
up, which I'm not a big anxiety person, but it's one of those I was like, oh my goodness. And it's not because I'm scared of sickness, it's genuinely because it's like, okay, now that's out of my
yep,
routine.
yep. Well, for me, it's the ease of, I mean, I'm a single parent. So when my kids are here, it's perfect. You know,
Yeah.
especially with summer coming up. Oh my God. If I can still
Oh,
work
yeah.
from home, now I don't have to worry about childcare on the days that I have my kids.
Well, and the beauty of it is, if you literally, if you open it up to what we've just, as a nation, as a globe, worldwide, we've shown we can work from home utilizing technology. Now the talent pool opens up, right? From an HR perspective, I think I'd be all over that, right? Like, hey, if I need somebody that speaks Portuguese as an accountant, hey, I can hire somebody that lives in Brazil
Yeah.
and
Easy day.
send,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, go buy a laptop, Sergio. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, just
Done.
done. You know what I mean? Like, and like that should be more of the thing, right? But I think that the younger kids, I think we beat up on the millennials a lot, right? Millennials get beat up
Sure.
for like TikTok and all the stupid
Technically, we're
stuff they're doing.
millennials, but I don't buy into it. I'm not a millennial.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those, like, I think they get beat up a lot. They do a bunch of stupid stuff. I mean, yeah, give them that. But they do one thing. They're trying to figure out how to tell people, we don't want to put suits on and go be robots in an office like we've seen our parents do, and they're miserable. Yeah. And now this is a great, like, kind of a segue into a new way to do things, yeah. Right? And so when you look at how that's affecting everybody, I think it's a cool thing. But kind of what you're talking about specifically, that they're doing that, but we're in Texas, right? So I have not heard of any companies that are like, you need to get your shot to come back to work. Because that doesn't.
Well, they're not overtly saying that, but I'm like reading between the lines, going like, well, you want me to call that number so that I'm vaccinated, so that you call my ass back to the office.
Well, and the weird thing is, doesn't that seem? I mean, because being in management, like say a young lady comes in to interview, and we ask her if she's pregnant. That's illegal. I think that. I mean, maybe somebody just told me that, so that. That's illegal. Yeah. So you're telling me I can't ask someone
if they're vaccinated,
like what that seems illegal as well. But I think everybody's just overlooking it right now, because my company's done the same thing. And I know several other people whose companies are like, hey, if you could tell us when you get vaccinated, that'd be great. And it's like, well, even if I do, I'm not telling you anything just because it's kind of none of your business, right? I didn't get the flu shot either. You know what I mean?
I didn't get a flu shot.
I think it's so weird because it's so divisive.
Yeah.
There are people that are like, oh, you must hate humanity. You didn't get the vaccinated.
You're an asshole. You must hate people if you didn't get vaccinated.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I just didn't want to.
I just didn't. I mean, it's my body, right? I mean, I don't want to put that into my body. If you do, I'm not hating on you. That's great. But it's become so divisive. It's similar to saying, like, hey, who'd you vote for? Like, but that it's a very divisive
Trust me, man,
thing.
I live in Connecticut. I don't talk politics.
Well, and that's just it, right? We were always taught, don't talk about these things. And the hard thing about it is that this vaccination thing has become another one of those things.
Is that a Grover?
That's my Grover from college.
Your double row German silver? I have one just like it. That's a damn good tambourine, sir.
It's been in a box for, I don't know. It's literally been in I remember buying that from Lone Star Percussion.
What did I?
But, it's one of those, I think that, we've gotten into adult stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you start talking about, like, what accomplishment looks like, I think that's really where a lot of my focus goes now, right? Because if we were hindsight's always 20/20, youth is wasted on the young, all of that, right? But if we were young with this knowledge now, maybe like you said, you would have been the kid that quit school altogether early on. You know what I mean? Like, just to run after. And I even remember thinking that in college, thinking to myself, like, that UNT jazz program is fantastic, just stellar, right? But remember, there were like 150 drummers or something like that wanted to play drum set, and you needed to play drum set at least for one semester in one of the bands.
Oh my!
And there's only like 8 bands.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's not that many.
I'm blowing stuff out my butt now, but it's one of those. There are not that many bands, and there's way more drummers. Yeah. And so I think I would have found that, like, that's a mountain. Yeah, like, okay, so I'm going to stick around here. I'm going to get lessons from whoever I can for a year and a half, and then I'm going to move to New Orleans and play buckets on the street and figure out how to do it myself. You know what I mean? Like,
or you're going to just end up getting a teaching certificate and go teach. Which to be
Yeah.
honest, is the only reason why I was a education major. Because I
Well,
knew I was like, well, what am I going to do with a performance degree? Like that doesn't, I can get a gig without a performance degree. I don't need a degree to get a
yeah.
job performing, but I do need a
Well,
degree if I want to be a teacher.
see, now I think we start to get into the conversation of, are universities still a necessity?
Worse.
That's a whole nother
That is a
conversation,
whole other
right? That's a
conversation.
whole nother
Yeah.
conversation because it's genuine. And like I said, you can look at this generation and you can beat them up as much as you want, but there's some validity in what is going on. There's not a lot of validity, but there is some, right? There's a little bit. I mean, I make fun of the 15-year-old all the time because she doesn't have social media just because I think it's a beating,
Yeah.
right? But it's one of those. Her friends have TikTok and they're always doing these weird TikTok dances, and it's like they don't move their feet; it's all like hands and whatnot. And I'm like, it's not dancing. Like you're just
moving your hands.
moving your
Yeah.
hands.
Can't go to the club
It's
and just
weird.
fucking. You can't vogue at
Maybe
the club.
you can't vogue.
I mean, you could. Nobody will know what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing.
But it's just genuinely like you start looking at it and it's like, you guys don't know what's going on right now,
No,
do
they
you?
don't.
You have no idea what's
But
happening.
neither did
But
we.
they're
Neither did
kids.
we. We
They're
didn't know what was
kids.
going on.
Exactly. They didn't know what was going
Oh
on.
my God.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing now? Now that you're an adult, because you are an adult, you got like 8 kids now, and they're
Yeah, it
all
feels like it,
girls.
right? They're all
Fuck,
girls.
man, how'd that
They're
happen?
all girls.
So, what are
I
you
don't know.
doing now? Like, I know that you're active. You're always doing. You were doing some Go Ruck stuff for a while. You've done some marathon. Like, how are you making sure that you're not? Because, like you said, even with the pandemic, you're staying home and you're working. Your company's getting more out of you than they were before, probably. Um, how are you staying who you are? Like this whole talk, we've been talking about the reason we went to North Texas was to follow our passion because our passion was music. But when your passion can't put food on the table, how are you keeping yourself sane?
So kind of that's like a two-part, right? It's one of those, like you mentioned earlier. It's like, well, technically, we kind of turned our backs on our
Right,
dream, and we chased paper,
right.
right? We're paper
Yep.
chasers, and so the hard thing about that is, how do you do that? Me personally, my question is, how do you do that and tell your kids not to do that? Because you don't want
Right.
that for your kids.
Right.
You don't want that for your
No, you
kids.
don't.
You want your kids to be able to follow their dreams. But the hard thing about it is, I want my kids to be able to follow their dreams. And if that means living in a shanty on the beach somewhere, I mean, I hope they don't get hurt. But at the same time, like, if that makes them happy, maybe living on a shanty on the beach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the hard thing about, it's
It
hard.
is.
It's
It's
hard
really
because
hard. And that's
as
kind of the whole point of this
yeah,
podcast. This whole not just your episode, everybody's episode. That's what I want. I'm trying to figure that out. Like, where is that line where
yeah.
you kind of are forced, your back is against the wall and you're like, okay, am I gonna go live in a shanty on the beach? Or am I gonna just suck it up and go get a job that pays all of my bills? I don't have to worry about it. And I have a little bit of time to go do what I really love to do, which is kind of where I'm
I
at
think
now. Like, right, like this, I love doing this. I love talking to people. I love hearing stories. So for me, this podcast is how I'm a little more than just that guy who wakes up and goes to work and feeds the kids and come home and go to sleep. And this is part of it. But also, earlier today, after work, I got finished with work at 3. I went downstairs to the basement. I started drumming for like an hour and a half,
there you go.
you know? But
Well, I think that it's one of those. I think that you have to prioritize, right?
right,
And
right.
so, obviously, if you're after our whole conversation, your kids are a high priority, right? My kids are a high priority. I hope that most, if not all, parents have their kids at the top, of their priority list. And so, if it comes down to having to feed your kids, having to do things like that, man, I mean, you're gonna hustle. You're gonna do whatever you need to do to feed those kids and make sure that they're good. But like I was saying earlier, maybe they don't need 5 scooters or a hoverboard or whatever, you know what I mean? And so maybe instead of buying that, $500 hoverboard or whatever, that I don't, maybe that was a week's worth of work or half a week's worth of work. I don't know. You know what I mean? Instead of spending that money on that, maybe you spend half a week with your kid. You know what I mean? And they would benefit from that more. And so all that to say, I think that it's not a quote that I don't even know who said it. I just heard it and it stuck with me.
It was probably
is
Paul.
That there's a lot of with your kids. There's a lot more that's caught with the C than taught with the T. So there's a lot more that's caught than taught.
Interesting.
And so with your kids, I'm a firm believer that your kids are watching you all the time.
Yeah, they are.
And so when it comes down to how do you teach your kids not to chase paper, right? You do want them to know, like, hey, it's important to provide for your family, this, that, and dad's going to work because he has provided this, and that. But at the same time, you don't ever want them to feel like that paper or that money is more important to you than they are. And that's a hard thing, right? That's a hard thing
to juggle.
For kids to understand.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard. That daddy has to go to work, Slim Shady. But I mean, it's literally one of those, like, daddy has to go to work, you stay here with your mom, and you will have to do that. But it's really, you have to guard your yeses and your nos, right? Everything you say yes to over here, the opposite effect, maybe you're saying no to time with your family because you're saying yes to more time at work or yes to doing these other things. And so obviously you have to be intentional with things that you say yes to. But one of the caught and taught thing, one of my favorite things that happened to me growing up, my grandfather, we grew up on a dead-end street. This will tell you. We grew up on a dead-end street. One side of the street was a junkyard with a big metal fence, like a big tin fence, so you couldn't see into the junkyard.
I think I remember you saying
this. We lived on the other side of the street, and it was a dead-end street. So it was literally like a whole street that, like, there's only like houses on the right side or something. You know what I mean? And so whenever the trash man would come down there, trash man in a big trash truck. This is before they had a big arm that just dumped the trash or whatever. He would go down there and he would have to take like a 50-point turn to turn the trash truck around. You know what I mean?
All right.
But I'll never forget, I don't even know how old I was. I was probably 3, maybe 4. It's like one of my first memories. Maybe I was 5. But I remember looking out the window and my grandfather had gone outside and he was just sitting at the end of the driveway. You can't be looking at anything because there's a tin fence on the other side of the street. Like, there's nothing there. And he was waiting, and when the trash man pulled up, 2 trash men jumped off the back of the truck. He handed them both beers. He drank a beer with both of those trash men, and the guy that drove the truck, he turned the truck around and he came back, and I don't remember if he handed the guy that was driving the truck a beer or whatnot.
This was the 80s, man. It totally could have happened.
Yeah, it could have. But it's one of those, like, the 2 trash men, shook his hand, jumped on the back of the truck, and they drove off. But it was one of those moments where he didn't do that to teach me anything because he didn't even know I was looking at him. He didn't even know I was watching.
Right.
What I caught that day by him doing that was not, oh man, alcohol is bad, or grandpa might be an alcoholic. I caught the fact that it's like, oh, you're not better than the trash man.
You're taking care of your fellow man. You're
you're not better than anybody. Yeah. And so when it comes, when a young boy can catch something off of something that small, you start to realize, like, oh, this caught and taught thing makes sense. So it's one of those, and I'm pointing at you, you're over there, but it's one of those, like, you taking time for self-care, whether it be, I know you talked about therapy here a couple episodes ago, whether it be therapy, whether it be your hour and a half to drum, whether it be you going outside and being a man and doing that woodworking like I saw you doing the other day. I even brought that up. And I was like, oh my, look at this man. your brow was
Yeah.
glistening. You know,
In the garage, covered in sawdust. I built a fire that night.
yeah,
Had a couple
exactly.
beers.
Fought a
I fought
grizzly.
a grizzly in my
The
backyard in Connecticut. Actually, it was a raccoon, but hey.
but it's one of those, you doing those things may feel like you're taking, like, okay, I'm taking time away from my family. And that's where you and I were talking, that makes it
Yeah.
hard, right? It's hard to step
Yeah.
away. But by doing that, you're actually showing your kids, like, this is
Oh my
okay.
God. Can you see? My
This is
mind is
okay.
blown. This is literally, oh my God. What a wonderful way of putting it, because a couple of episodes ago, I don't remember which one it was, I was talking about this exact thing where I felt bad, right? I would come home and, you know, my kid's mom would say, you need to go do something for yourself. And I was like, I've been gone 15 hours, 16 hours today. I don't want to go be gone again. But that's 100, you're 100% right. And that's the thing that I learned is that, and that's such a great way of putting it too. No matter how long you're gone, at some point, you have to be gone a little longer, because you have to get away
And,
from the shit that makes you your job, right? Like you got to go, you
yeah.
have your thing, you have to go do it every day. You're away from your family, you're doing this thing, that's fine. But at some point, you still have to be away and go chop some wood in the backyard, or go play some drums, or go painting, or go drinking with your boys. You have to find something to do. And that's what I loved about what Evan said. He was like, just go do something, you know? But that's such a
Well,
beautiful way of putting it. Holy shit.
but you're showing your kids that this is
Yeah.
okay. It's, and I think that we're that generation, right? As odd as it sounds. I think we're that generation to speak into our kids and be like, it's and not to sound too like cliche, but it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. Whereas, I've always had a problem. I like to help people, but I don't like to ask for help.
Same. I hate asking
And
for help.
and and it could be anything. It could be something simple, right? But the funny thing about it is, in my head, it always came across as, I don't want to be a bother.
Yeah.
And so people probably appreciate that I don't
I'm
bother
not a
them.
burden.
I'm not a
Yeah.
burden to people. But what it really comes across to others as is pride. Oh, this guy's so prideful. He's willing to help me, but he'll never accept
Yeah,
help.
he's willing to fail miserably
Yeah.
instead of
He'd
asking
rather
for
fall
a
on his face
simple,
instead of asking
yeah.
for help.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when we do things like that, even though we think we're teaching our kids, like, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and there's a time for that.
Oh,
Don't get me
100%.
wrong. Like, hey,
Yeah, you
man,
got to work.
like there's a time for that. Don't lay down. You gotta move. But it's one of those. At the same time, teaching your kids that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to say, hey, I need an unbiased ear to talk into. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Which I think growing up, whether or not it was intended, we had Rambo, we had all these things that showed us, like, men don't cry, men don't do stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so, and I've met fantastic men. I've met men that are genuinely have accolades as a list, as far as, like, they've done this, that, this, and that. As I'm sure you have. You've sent me pictures on off of a boat where I'm like, oh my goodness, you're shooting that thing. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? It's one of those, like, dude, just
Nothing better
genuine
than a belt-fed
dudes
machine
that are
gun.
right, just genuine dudes that are just
Yeah.
badasses. You know what I mean? And hey, those dudes, they know what it is to have broken heart. They know what it
Yeah.
is to have felt pain, and this and that, this and that. Our kids will learn so much more from our failures than they ever will our accomplishments, right? And so when I one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about, that I do, that's not associated with work, is with our church, and I deal a lot with teenagers, and they're great.
Interesting. Oh, I
They're
thought you were going to
great.
say
They're
music, because I've been seeing you post a lot about you playing live.
Well, I do. I play drums, up there as well. But it's one of those. it's more so getting to sit down and talk to these guys and see what's going on with them and be able to kind of be an ear for kids that are feeling that pressure that we just talked about for the last
Yeah.
hour, right? You know, like they're graduating high school, but oh man, I'm going to college
Right.
and this, that, this, and that. I don't know. I still don't know what I'm supposed to be
Right.
doing. Sometimes they just need to hear it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody knows what they're supposed to be
No,
doing.
nobody knows.
It's going to be
You're
okay.
going to be fine.
It'll be all right.
Yeah.
It'll be cool. Whereas, you know, because I think a lot of them feel, and not just them, obviously. I think it's kids in general. Uh, they're seeing a lot of pressure, and a lot of them think, you know, man, my parents, maybe, you know, my dad is gonna, you know, beat me if I don't make good grades. I mean, for good reason. Maybe your kid, you know, you want your kid to do well in school and this, that, and
Sure.
that. But you know, I've had these conversations with the 15-year-old. I'm like, look, it's way more important to me that you're not like lying and cheating and stealing than it is if you're making straight A's,
Right.
right? Because if you're smart and you know you're stealing stuff on the weekends, like that's a lot harder for me to teach you than some math, right? I
Right.
mean,
Right. Right. I don't
yeah,
make a big deal out
well,
of my kids' grades. You know, it's just because, well, first of all, they don't really have grades right now, but like, you know, I don't make that the thing. You know, when I pick them
yeah,
up from school, I'm like, hey, how was today? Did anything awesome happen? Like,
yeah,
did something hilarious happen? Like, I want to know how your day went. And when they do come home with a bad grade or something, I say, oh man, that sucks. What can we do to make it better? You know, like, did you try
yeah,
your hardest, or did you study hard, or like I try to figure out where, if there's something that went wrong, or if it's just that maybe they suck at whatever that subject is, and that's okay.
oh
You
yeah,
can suck at a thing. It's fine.
yeah. It's perfectly fine to not be great at
Right.
everything because Joe Schmo or Bobby Joe, the people to the right or left of you in class, I'm sure he's really good at something and she's really good at
Yeah.
something. And you know, and that's what makes it difficult. And I mean, you know, I've told the 15-year-old from a very young age, I don't need someone else to tell me how smart you are.
No.
I know how
Yeah.
smart you are.
Exactly.
You know, like, don't get me wrong, make some grades because if you could get some scholarships and that's going to help you, this,
Yeah.
that. It's part of your growth. That's great. But at the same time, you know, it's almost demeaning to be like, okay, well, your whole worth is built up around this standardized test or your report card or something to that
Yeah.
effect.
My
And
daughter,
you
my
know,
10-year-old, my daughter had a standardized test. What's today? Tuesday. She had one yesterday, and she told me about it Friday. She was like, "Hey, Monday, my teacher says I got to go to bed early on Sunday night, get lots of good sleep, blah blah blah. We have a big test on Monday." I'm like, "Okay." I didn't talk about it the whole weekend. I didn't say one word about it. Monday morning rolls around. We're at the school. I'm dropping them off. Still hadn't said anything about it. And we get out of the truck, and I give her a big hug, and I'm like, "Hey, do your best. You're gonna be fine. Take your time." That's it. I didn't make a big deal out of
yeah,
it. I wasn't like, oh my God, are you ready? Like, did you, Sunday night, I wasn't like, okay, we got to go to bed because you have a huge thing tomorrow morning. Like, nothing of that. Just chill.
yeah,
I want you to be relaxed and happy and have a normal weekend. She was like, I have to go to bed early. I was like, kid, I'm not going to do anything special. I'm not going to do anything different, right? Because you know
yeah,
as well as I do, I took this and I've thought about this actually as I was telling my daughter this. She's like, I gotta go to bed early. I was like, no, 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 no. We're not gonna do anything different because you know as well as I do, as a performing musician, when you do something different the day before the gig, that'll fuck the gig up.
oh yeah,
So I was
yeah.
like, we're not.
You eat something that messes your stomach
No,
up. You eat too early. Now you're
no.
hungry in the
You go to
morning.
bed
Like,
early. You go to bed super late. You do something different. That's what fucks shit up. And I was like, we're not doing anything different. Nothing. And so I didn't talk about it. We didn't do anything different. We didn't go to bed earlier. We didn't go to bed later. We went normal, just normal, happy, normal weekend. I didn't say shit about it. Monday morning, I was like, hey, good luck, kid. Take your time. That's it.
and how did she feel about
She
it at
felt
the end of
great.
the day? Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, that's how it should be, right? It's literally, I don't know. I'm not a, I don't want to ever come across as like everybody should get a trophy, right? Hey,
Right.
the winner should get a trophy,
Right.
maybe first and
You going
second
soft
place
on me,
get a
man? You're gonna
trophy,
tell
but
me you want participation trophies?
no, hey, that's why you never. That's why my all my running medals are in the garage because it's
Yeah.
like I'm like they're all participation. I did not win any of
Yo,
those,
we
but I
we
did run.
got we got a medal for DCI 2003, right? I don't know where that fucking thing is because it wasn't first or second or third place. I don't know where it is.
I don't think I did. We
We
get one?
did. We got a
I don't
little
remember.
fucking medal to hang around our necks. We got fourth place that year, but it wasn't
Yeah,
first,
I don't
second, or
remember.
third. So I don't know where that thing is. It's in the basement somewhere.
Oh yeah, exactly. I
You know
mean,
what's on
to
my
be honest,
wall?
my
That's on my wall. The fucking
nice.
drum heads and
My
the picture of us from '03.
mine's sitting over here. Yeah, yeah. The the funny thing is, my degree is actually hanging in my garage, and
Perfect.
people come over and they're like, "Is that your college degree?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." In your garage? I'm like, "Yeah," because I mean, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, it was an expensive piece of paper, but at the same time, like, it I think you and Evan said it really well. It just shows that you're willing to jump through a bunch of hurdles. You're willing to and to buckle down and jump through a bunch of hurdles, and that's cool. But at the same time, it's one of those like, don't get me wrong. Like if I think that a lot of people work really hard on that stuff,
They do.
and if you feel like that's your accomplishment, then man, blow it up, put
That's
it
right.
front and center. That's
And
great.
yep.
But it goes back to us talking about what does accomplishment look like, and I never want my kids to think that accomplishment means you have 50-story house and you're Scrooge McDuck in it. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
just it because if that's the case, like you said earlier, you can do that 50,000 ways, and only one of those ways is maybe going to be making you happy,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right. I would venture to guess that most of us are working in a job like you never set out to be an accountant, right? Like you
oh
didn't graduate high school with big blue eyes. I'm going to be an accountant. Like you weren't
yeah,
I wasn't graduating high school going, "Someday I'm going to work in a cubicle and I'm going to edit documents all day."
but I mean, like you said, you're enjoying it and you're good at it. You're detail
Yeah.
oriented, and so it's one of those. Sometimes that's fine,
Yeah.
right? That's fine, and exactly what you're getting at. You have now you have extra money, you have extra time that you can pour into something that you enjoy doing. You know
100%.
what I mean?
Yep.
Now, the hard thing about it, and I think that you won't get as I'll say I because I don't want to make it sound like a you statement, but I won't get as good. I won't be a huge percussion, guru doing it on the side, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like if for lack of a better word, if you half-ass it, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to get full benefit of it because you're not putting all your time and effort
Right.
into it. Um, However, that's the exchange that you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay, well, if I can feel good doing it, I can play with a couple of bands, I can do some live shows, I can hone my craft and be comfortable with it on my own time, then you shouldn't be made to feel bad by doing that. Now, I think the only people that would be gawking at us are the people that are true artists, and man, kudos to them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That are living in the shanty on the beach, or maybe you're Beyonce and Jay Z
Yeah.
and they live
Yeah.
in the penthouse
Yeah.
of New York. It's a crapshoot, right?
Yeah.
And you never know how that's going to pan out. And so I don't think that going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, I don't think that I even ran away from music as a profession uh, because I was afraid I wasn't going to make money at it. I just thought I wasn't going to be good at it. Like just genuinely,
Whoa. So it
like
wasn't even about happiness. It was more about
no,
you didn't think you were going
it,
to be
it
good. Like what? Like you didn't think you're
like
going to be good enough a teacher?
well, I didn't think that I was going to be good at it. Is just genuinely like when I started looking, like I felt like defeated.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I
you
mean,
know what I
that's
mean?
easy.
Like just
Yeah.
genuinely, you feel defeated, and you're like, well, I know all these other guys that are really good,
Yeah.
and I'm just not going to be good. And
Dude, I always
so
thought you were better than me.
but it's such the cop out though, right? It's like the kid that kids nowadays won't understand this, but it's the kid that is gonna lose, so he hits the reset button on the
Oh
console real
yeah, yeah,
fast,
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
oops, you know
Yep.
what I mean?
Oops.
Like what a cop out, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so in retrospect, would I change it? I don't know, you know what I mean? I think that if the funny thing is, I'm 38, and I think that the question that still stumps me. Somebody asked me this the other day. We were like, doing an icebreaker somewhere or
Yeah.
something, and it was like, you money is not an object. Tomorrow morning, money's not an object. Like you have all the money, you have infinite money. What are you gonna do? Like, what do you do? And the funny thing is, if you take some time and think about that, like I think said a different way, if somebody said this, you'll know you're calling because you're called to do the thing that you would do if you weren't getting paid to do it.
Right.
That's the same. It's the same question. It's just said two different
Yeah.
ways. If money is not an object, you have all the money that you need to pay your bills, to feed your kids, everything of that nature. Tomorrow morning, what do? Okay, you quit your job. Well, the funny thing is, I think me personally, and this is, it's kind of like I'll say this, and it's almost like a sad thing to say because it's one of those. I think I would quit, but like I would just like sit for a minute. Like I would just like sleep until noon
Yeah.
tomorrow, and then like maybe even sleep like for the next 2 or 3 days, just like not bathe, just kind of roll
Yeah.
around, have fun with the
Yeah.
kids, and then I'll figure it out. I'll figure out what the next thing's gonna happen in like 2 weeks to a
Yeah.
month. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And maybe that means you're volunteering to do that thing that you actually want to do. Maybe you're teaching kids music for free because you don't need the
Yeah.
money. Maybe it's learning to cook and getting your own food truck
Dude.
just because it's something that you know
Yeah,
what I
it's
mean?
so
Like,
funny because like I've thought the same. I've had the same kind of line of thinking before. Like, what was it, like a month, 3 months ago when the lottery was up to like $1 billion,
oh no,
and like everybody bought tickets. Like I was like, I can't not buy a ticket. Like
yeah,
it's just ridiculous amount of money. And then I started thinking about it. My kids were like, "What are you gonna do? Like if you win?" And I'm like, I don't know, but at some point I would probably have some kind of job.
yeah,
Like
you would.
I would not work. I would have something to do because at the end of the day, music, as much as I would love to play music all the time and do that all the time, and that's what I've always wanted to do with myself, there's still that factor of just because I want to do it really bad doesn't mean it's going to actually happen in the way that I want it to. So I'm going to still have to fill my time up with something else. So I was like,
Yeah,
I'll probably open like a coffee shop, or maybe I'll have a music store, like something. I'll do something that's like a mundane, normal kind of thing, But like, if money was not a thing, it would still be something that I would do every day. I'd go to work. I'd do something with myself that was not spectacular because my hopes and dreams were always spectacular and huge and kind of dependent on whether or not people liked my shit enough for me to be a Jay-Z,
yeah.
So it's like, oh, at the end of the day, I'd probably end up doing something similar. I'd have a job that I went to every day, and that would be it. We just wouldn't have to worry
What,
about
what,
bills.
Yeah, it's that Forrest Gump, right? It's well, okay, guess that's one less thing we got to
Yeah.
worry about, right? I mean, but that's just it, right? I mean, if you can say that you're happy with that, then that's a great spot to be,
Yeah.
right? It's a great spot
Yeah.
to be because that lets you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and that's perfectly fine, right?
Dude.
Oh, he's going for
I
another one.
know. And the funny thing is, I gotta pee really bad.
Just go, man. Just go.
I do have a screen that says I'll be back, but I'm not going to do that. We have
You gotta-
one viewer right now.
I think the consensus is that that's you,
It's
right?
got to be. It has to be.
It seems to come up every.
It's got to be me. I'm the one guy.
It's gotta be me.
My mom did text me. She was like, "I'm totally watching," but I haven't seen it.
She left because
we're boring.
Yeah, we are. I would feel horrible if you've had one viewer this whole time, but that one viewer went to 0 on the episode that I was with you. Like, just don't tell me. Just don't tell me.
Yeah.
I see the little red dot in the corner. Just stop recording. You're like, yeah, okay, we're done.
It's over. No, the funny thing, and I think I said it with Evan. I don't remember what episode it was, but the funny thing is that yeah, I do the live thing just because it's fun, and if people show up, they show up. And at some point, I'd like to think that I'm going to get big enough where we'll have people in, watching it live. But I realize that people have lives and they have shit going on. And like I said, the only reason why I do it live is in the event that somebody is available to watch it happen live. That's amazing. But at the end of the day, I still have Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other platforms where the audio gets posted. So I get more listens from that than I ever have with the live videos.
Well, this is a really cool thing that you do, man. It's one of those. I know that you and Evan got into that conversation. It sounded like you guys are really well versed. I have listened to a couple of the Kevin Smith stuff early on.
Yeah.
I listened to a bunch of you guys talked about the what's his name. Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah.
I've listened to a couple of those. One guy I was listening to that I was pretty blown away by, very similar to kind of the Joe Rogan setup, was Russell Brand. He kind of moved somewhere else though.
Russell Brand, yeah, he's been on Rogan's podcast before.
Well, yeah, but he moved his stuff like to a different like format. But if you're ever, I think his older stuff is still on like the podcast stuff. If you're looking for something to listen to, that dude is very enlightening.
He really is.
It's like, what? I thought you were a comedian. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I thought he was the bunny from Hop, and he's that too. Yeah. But, I mean, yeah. Just, but yeah.
No, yeah. I remember hearing an episode of Joe Rogan, I think, with Russell Brand on it, and I was like, oh my god, this guy is like, he's not at all what you think he is.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
very deep.
Literally,
he's a thinker.
Yeah, and he never plays those roles, and that just it's Hollywood. It's all
what's funny is he played a caricature of that in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Dude, I saw that movie like one time
in college. We were in college. I'm pretty sure that movie came out.
We probably saw it in college, but at the same time, just so you viewers know, we also went and saw. Were you with us when we went and saw? Oh no, I don't think we went and saw it. I think it came out on video, on DVD. We bought it on DVD. Was Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. came out our freshman year.
We went to the theater. I went to the theater.
We went. We went to the theater and saw that. Yeah. As college kids. And
that was our freshman year, wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure we went to Grapevine Mills.
Watching cartoons.
Right? Yeah. We didn't even have GPS. I think John Bunner took us. Shouts out to John Bunner if you're listening.
In his Honda Civic.
That's right. He had a Civic. Dude, what happened to that truck? You still got that truck?
My white truck? Mm-hmm. I actually sold it a couple of years back.
Oh, breaks my heart.
Yeah, well, it was just sitting. It was actually sitting at my grandmother's house, and I was like, man, there's no reason for this truck to be just sitting here. I was gonna sell it for like $500. My wife put it on OfferUp and got like, I don't know, like $1,700 for it. It still had the same tires it did on it from college.
And the duck sticker?
I was like, I think I took the duck sticker off. It started to peel. Yeah, big duck sticker. But my dad still has his North Texas stickers all over his truck and everything.
Dude, how's your dad?
Oh, he's great, man. He's great. He's I think he's younger than
He
I am. You
is.
know what I
He's
mean? Like
always been younger than you.
yeah, he will not stop. Like him and my mom. My mom is like certified scuba diving and
What?
skydiving, and yeah,
Your dad's got to be
they're
fully gray by now, right?
now he's still salt and pepper. So I mean, it's one of
Really?
those
So he
like,
hasn't aged a bit, I
yeah,
bet.
no, good genes, good genes. Yeah,
Fuck.
I mean, if you saw him today, yeah,
He would
you'd
look
be like,
exactly
oh
the same.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh my God.
However, I will say you posted that picture of your folks, and I saw your dad's mustache, and I was like, oh my goodness, like envy set in straight
Yeah,
away.
dude, my dad's stash is fucking epic. Fucking
Like
epic.
so I go through phases, right? Like I had long hair, I've had a beard, I've had mustaches,
Yeah.
this, that. It's mustaches, and you're right about there, right? You're about to have to make the decision whether or not you want an upper lip or
Yeah.
not.
Well, I trimmed it today. So it's shorter than it was.
And so it was probably over your lip
Oh yeah.
already. You were getting like peanut butter and ice cream and stuff
Yep.
in there, and then the little hairs get in your mouth.
Yep.
I mean, it's like kind of
Yeah.
gross, right? But it's
I
one of
went on a
those.
date last night and I had fish tacos and it was just like shit all up in my
Oh,
beard and I was like, I gotta trim this thing.
was that like an innuendo, or what? Like you actually had fish
No,
tacos?
actual fish tacos.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't
I'm
know if we
playing the
were
slow
speaking
game this
code.
time around. I'm
Good,
being smart.
good.
I'm not rushing into anything. She might actually listen to
That's
this.
good.
We'll see. She
That's
might be the
good.
one
Well,
viewing.
she's been the whole time.
Yeah, it's been her the whole time.
That's kind
I
of
haven't checked my phone. She
stockish.
might have texted me. Who knows?
No, that's great, man. That's great. I mean, that's one thing we'll have to get back together, offline and have conversations about, because it's one of those like, man, I think that we could start a whole nother 2 hour conversation on divorce and dating
Yeah.
after divorce, and kids and dating after divorce and kids,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's
that
one of
was one
those.
of those things in my head that I was like, that could be something that gets brought up, but I like to let things go organically. Like wherever we go, you know?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a great thing, right? It's one of those like I think it's cool that you're setting up this format to be a truly organic conversation,
Yeah.
right? It's not. You might have a couple of bullet points, but
Yeah.
just for your listeners, you didn't even tell me what you wanted to talk about. You were just like, okay, and go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, really, it's just the main theme of, how are you, how are you maintaining your sanity? How are you maintaining your sense of self despite the fact that you have to go to work and maybe your job is not something that you're exactly passionate about? You still got to go do it. But at the end of the day, you still have to deal with yourself and you have to wrestle with that person who's
Yeah,
maybe unsatisfied with what they do for a living. You still got to find a way to be a happy, self-loving individual. And that's what I'm after. And so for me, it's about hearing where you've been and where you've come from and where you're going and what you're doing now and how your life is and how you're dealing with it. Like it's all intertwined. So to me, as long as we circle around the idea of essentially your mental health and stability,
oh yeah.
that's
No,
it.
I
That's
mean,
it.
yeah.
I think it's
It's
fascinating.
well, it is, right, because I think that it feels like mental health wasn't even a thing when we were
No, it
younger,
was not.
right?
No.
And I think it's because I always hearken it back to the days of like like my grandfather was a vet, and we had a lot of World War II vets in the family and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And so while that generation was still alive, I think if you as a young man started crying about something, it was like rub some dirt in
Yep.
it, like pick yourself
Yep.
up, get out of my. I mean, because and not saying that they were wrong, right? Because that was the generation that understood what loss
Yep.
meant. That was also a generation
Sacrifice.
that understood that, okay, the movies about warfare are just
Yep.
movies. They don't tell you that you're going to pee and poop yourself when you're getting shot at. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like those types
Yeah.
of things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so it's genuinely like they had uh, they had that mindset that it was like, no, you'd be fine. Get up. Come on.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so, and they meant well, but a lot of it was mental health wasn't really a discussion, right?
No.
And so when you start to push forward into like our fathers, I think that's the generation that started to understand a little bit more. Like, okay,
Oh yeah.
maybe we should love on our kids a little bit more.
Yep.
You know, but it's still one of those like, okay, it's generational. So their fathers were really harsh with them. They're trying to love on us, but maybe they don't know exactly how to do that the right
Maybe
way.
they leaned.
So we're like
maybe they leaned a little too hard into the love.
too far that way or not
Yeah.
enough, or you know what I mean? Just trying to figure out how to make things work better. And so hopefully we're doing a little bit better with our kids, and they'll be happy with that, and maybe they'll figure it out,
Yep.
right? And so I think it's genuinely, hey, I think that those conversations are going in a good direction. And you guys touched on it a couple of episodes ago with therapy,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those growing up Hispanic, it was always like, hey, we don't talk to people outside the family about our problems. Like you need to talk to somebody, you talk to your mom, you talk to me, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it wasn't really said in a way to be like, you can't talk to anybody. It wasn't like,
Right.
hey, you're on lockdown.
Right.
It was just genuinely like, we don't do that,
Well,
right?
I think ideally that's what you would want. I mean, I've told my kids that,
Yeah.
I recently had a conversation with my kids about like, hey, that's what I'm here for. Ideally,
Yeah.
I would like to be the first person you come to. Like if you have some major thing going on, you should feel comfortable enough to come to me about it. Cause ideally I've built that trust up and you feel comfortable enough talking to me about whatever it is you're dealing with. And I told them, I was like, I don't give a fuck what it is. Like you could have murdered somebody,
Yeah.
and if that's what you got to talk about and you got to get it off your chest, talk to me about it. And if you
I
can't,
think the hard thing about
there are other options out there, and we can explore that.
Well, and I'm the same way, right? I'm the same way with our. I mean, that goes for a marriage too, right? That goes for my wife. Like, hey, if you gotta say something,
Yeah.
right? Don't just, But I think that I have more recently really come to appreciate the fact that counselors and therapists, they're trained for the response or the listening. Whereas you say that you'd be okay if your kid was like, hey, I just murdered somebody.
Right. That was an extreme example.
But
yeah.
Yeah, an extreme example, but it's one of those like maybe a less extreme example. Like, hey, daddy, this is Joe Schmo, and I love him. You know what I mean?
Shit, fucking human, and I'm gonna be like,
and yeah, and you're like reaching in your back pocket, like Joe Schmo. You got a 2-second head start because my dad's reaching. You know what I mean?
My dad's
like,
reaching. He's got his sig in his belt.
Everything.
He's got a sig in his belt. He's ready to. You better fucking.
Yeah.
All right.
You better run. Yeah, and so it's one of those like sometimes I can appreciate that an outside individual.
Yeah, because they're
may
100% removed. They're completely what's the word?
Unbiased. Right.
There's another word.
Removed. Disassociated.
Removed. I can't think of it.
Synonyms. How many words can you think
of any?
The funny thing about that is, though, right? It's one of those like you want your kids to talk to you. You want to have open and transparent relationships, and all of that comes from a place of trust.
Yep.
And but I think that what you're talking about, like a therapist, a counselor, that's going to be somebody that's trained for those responses. The nice thing about like what I was talking about doing with these teenage kids is that you can, in that position, in that spot, be an ear and be that unbiased person without them feeling like they have to go to a therapist or a counselor. Right. And so if somebody reaches out and they're like, hey,
objective.
Yeah, there you go. Objective.
Got it.
There you go.
Nailed it.
5 years later.
Yeah.
2 hours later.
2 hours later. Yeah.
That's
the beauty of 100%. That's the beauty of somebody who's not in your family or in your immediate circle. They're 100% objective because they don't know anybody else that you're involved with. They're getting,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because they're getting all of their information from solely you. But, and it's funny because I've said this, I don't remember if I said this before on the podcast, but every time I've been to therapy, I've always tried to do my absolute best to give them the most accurate representation of the situation, even if it makes me look bad. Because I
Yes.
truly want their best response. So if I'm lying to the person and I'm trying to make myself look better, I know that they're not going to be able to give me a very good response because it's just not going to be helpful. So I
Yeah.
try. I'm like, look, I did this thing. I said this. And it was fucking shitty. I'm pretty sure they took it this way. Like, I just want the best response possible so that I can get better. And I don't
Right.
know that a lot of people do that.
No, I think a lot of people, they go about it in the way that you would take a friend to lunch,
Yeah.
and my wife is this, my wife is that, and then as a friend, what is your response? Like, oh yeah, man, like that sounds
Yeah.
horrible, and then now that person feels validated,
Right.
and
Right.
so a lot of yeah, and that's the hard thing is if you're going to therapy or to counseling for validation, that's probably the
Right.
wrong reason to
Right.
go.
And you don't want me as a friend because I might not validate you. Like, if you say some fucked up shit to me, I'm
Well,
going to be like, yo, that maybe you shouldn't have done that.
that's wrong. Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, though, that's the kind of friend you want. And to take it a step
Yes.
further, that's exactly the kind of parent you want. You know, my parents
What
had no problem telling me, yeah, hey, you fucked up. And I go,
yeah,
oh
that's on
shit,
you. Yeah.
really? But like, the beauty of that, though, and this is what I want to create for my kids, is they'll tell you that you fucked up, but they still love you and they still care about you, and they're going to help you figure out how to not be fucked up next time you come across that situation.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference between loving someone and and pleasing someone, right? A people
Ooh,
pleaser is just you're just going to constantly be the person that's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, you're right. You know,
All right.
I have definitely you know, and loving someone, actually loving someone means that you're going to tell them the hard thing when they don't want to
Yeah.
hear it. And so, I mean, you know, I've definitely been in instances with friends where they've gone, you know, oh, you know, this girl is this girl is that, and all the rest of their friends are telling them, oh man, just leave her and go do whatever you want to go do. And it's like, you know, are you willing to be that one friend that's like, man, I think that was really your mess up, like,
Yeah.
you know, you can be mad at me for a minute. I'll see you when you get over it,
Right.
right? Because at some point you're going to look back at it and realize like that I was telling you the truth when nobody else
Yeah.
was,
And
right?
that's
So
to call it back to the very beginning of this episode, literally the first 5 seconds. That's exactly why I keep guys like you and Evan around, because I know you're not going to bullshit me. Right? There were plenty of times where I called you or I texted you. I was like, Rich, shit's going down. And there may have been, I don't remember, but there may have been a moment where you could have totally given me a truth bomb and been like, dude, you fucked up. Or this, no, you shouldn't have thought that. Or, you know, you weren't, I always knew that you were not just going to validate me to make me feel better. And that's why I always reached out to you guys.
well, you know, and I appreciate it because once again, like having you as a good friend, you know, it's one of those we have been through some weird stuff. We've been through some, you know, like really cool times. We've been through some times when it's like both of us. It's probably come out of both of our mouths to the other one, like, "You did what?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, rough. You know what I
I'll
mean?
never
Like,
forget. I'll never forget. Summer of '03. You were just one day we were outside and we were repping the fucking Four-Lit Lick or something, and you were like, fuck it. Let's go play cadets next year and we'll just play dirty. Let's just go play for cadets next year.
yeah. I used to love their book because it was all paradiddles,
Yeah, just
and it was just like
notes,
I was like, oh, this is
no
great,
rests,
paradiddle after
just no
paradiddle.
rests.
This is
Yeah.
fantastic.
9 and 3 the whole
They,
time. You good.
I don't know that they never had any short fat Mexican people on the cadet snare line, though. I don't know if they would have let me.
Right? They
know.
all seem to be exactly like Tim Maynard.
They were
in
like
my
a
memory.
very specific height
Yeah.
and thin, Caucasian guys.
No, there was
I
a
could have
black
been.
guy,
I
right?
could have
Cadets
been the
2000
first
had a
guy.
black guy.
Oh, there was a
He
black
was
guy
like
in
the
there.
center, wasn't he?
Sorry, black guy. The black guy.
I don't know your name,
yes,
guy, but
he
like you
was,
were the
yeah,
shit because you were towards the
yeah.
center.
He was smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was good.
And I'm sure. I mean, dude, drum corps. I really don't like the word inclusive the way it's used nowadays,
Yeah.
right? Oh, we got to be inclusive.
Yeah.
But I will say that drum corps is probably a lot more inclusive now than it ever was. And that's because when we marched, it was very inclusive of a lot of
It really was.
But I think more it's probably, now it's probably.
It's interesting. I actually did think about this the other day, and I was watching a video from early 2000s. I think it was Blue Devils. And they all had really baggy pants. They were all just doing like a rehearsal or something. They had really baggy jeans. It was clearly they were just doing a video to show how cool the Blue Devils were, right? And I remember thinking like, man, all those guys look California. Like there was like a couple of white dudes. Everybody else was definitely not white. And I was like, that speaks to like the times. Like back then, it was somewhat rare to travel that far for a drum corps. I mean, we did just because we were following Paul, but a lot of people that's where they went to Blue Devils because they were right fucking there,
Yeah.
And I've never ever seen drum corps as non-inclusive. Then again, we got into it in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, but it's always been, to me, if you're good, if you've got the hands, you get the spot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't give a fuck what you look like.
Yeah.
That's why you can have a short, fat Mexican.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was short, but I wasn't fat back then. I'm still growing just in the wrong ways, right? It's one of those, it is what it is.
And Noyes was not this, he could move. We'll just say that.
Yeah. Was not the stereotypical
center guy.
No. The center guy. Good old Noyes. He would never run anywhere. He just moved his arms to make it look like he was running.
He never ran.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw him run.
And people are like, "Don't drink water. That's weakness." Noyes like, "Snare line's taking a water break."
That's right. Snare line's taking a water break.
Everybody, go drink your water. It's fantastic. Yes.
God damn. I'm gonna call it. I think this is a good one, man. I think we knocked it out of the park.
Well, I hope so. I hope that I didn't make you lose your one viewer.
No, man, we're still
good. The bot is still there.
I don't know who it is. It's probably me. It's the bot. You're right. It's the bot.
Oh,
the chat moderator bot, probably. Who knows? Who gives a shit? It's fun.
So you leave the video up on YouTube, but then you post the audio to all the other formats, is what you're saying, right? Cool.
Right. So you'll be able to see this video until the end of time.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity. I was going to say that, but I don't want to sound like a lawyer.
Right. Hey, we know you're reading all those lawyer documents,
bro.
Counting.
So my company gave me all the hardest shit. They gave me all the finance documents. They gave me all the IT documents, and they gave me all the nuclear documents.
Ooh.
All the hard shit. I don't get all the easy stuff like HR. So like I'm reading finance things like all day, and it makes no sense to me.
Your next gig's gonna be with Reyes.
Shit. He just started a Facebook page, I think, for his new venture.
I thought you were gonna say he just got on Facebook. It's like he's gonna open a MySpace account next, right? I mean, it's like
I half expected to see you opening up a MySpace.
I don't. Literally, I have that Instagram account, and I've been thinking about getting rid of that sometimes, right? Because it's one of those, like, you just compare yourself to everybody over and over again.
You gotta stop that shit, man.
Well, that's the hard thing, right? I have to purge, like, every couple of months. I have to, like, unfollow anyone I don't actually know. Like, if I can't actually pick up the phone and call you, maybe I shouldn't be following you. You know what I mean?
do the same thing. every couple of months, I'm like, I don't know that. I don't really know that person. I should probably just stop following them.
Right. Exactly.
The
Exactly.
same way, especially
Well,
on
no, I
Instagram.
know you. Right, right. Well, I know you said you're going to call it, and these kids just got back home from a long walk.
Perfect
So
timing.
before you know it, they're going to be over here beatboxing or something.
All right, man.
Dude,
Dude, this was awesome. We
well,
should probably
yeah,
do
it
a
was
follow
great
up.
talking to
We
you.
can talk about the other topics too, because those are really important. So,
Yes, they're all really important. Feel free to use really important topics with your other really important guests, right? You know,
dude,
it's one of those like, and then I'll just comment on
you'll comment on the on the
on
Instagram post.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Be like just long-winded
I'm
comments.
about
They're
it.
like,
I'm all
this
about
guy
it.
is
You
crazy.
made me look like a
Yeah.
chump. Oh, speaking of which, we played that lick on Instagram when we posted our videos. I went back not too long ago and realized I didn't play the fucking cheeses that I was supposed to play.
Oh,
I fucked that.
you cheated? You just played some
I played some
diddles?
flams. I didn't even play the diddles. I just played flams.
You looked good doing it, and you did the sticks in and everything. I mean, it was fantastic.
You wore the Regiment 03 shirt, represent. So
I mean, I had to cut it off. I mean, no, I mean, you know, it's one of those like, this fit. It's like that quote from Jurassic Park, right? You guys talked Jurassic Park here a couple of episodes ago, and it's like, you guys thought about if you could, but you never thought about if you should. You know what I mean? Like, that's that shirt. That was me doing a video in that shirt. Yeah. So
cut that shit off right here.
belly button love, right? Well, no. This was great, man. Thanks for having me on.
No, man, it was my pleasure, man. I can't wait to do it again.
Cool. Anytime.
All right, brother. I'm gonna hit the outro.
Shout out.
Bye.